First up, let's talk about, as far as the West Asia conflict is now concerned, what happens when the next round of talks, when it comes to the diplomatic spotlight, which is back on the US-Iran equation, and President Trump now has said that Iran had requested for a fresh round of talks in Doha, with Washington confirming that the senior envoys like Steve Witkoff and Jari Kushner are set to join this high-level engagement, even as the White House's push for renewed diplomacy. Doha now seems to be emerging as the key venue for efforts to ease tensions, as the ceasefire that was agreed upon by the two countries clearly has been seen several violations last week. Let's connect with Peter Kushner, joining us as a geopolitical expert from Washington. Peter, good evening to you. Thank you very much for taking out your time. Something which President Trump has said, immediately Iran has refuted. Now, it is being said that there are no direct talks with the US negotiators or the delegation that is now being planned, but it seems that Doha seems to be the destination for carrying out with the next round of talks. 60 days. What is, the timeline that has been set by President Trump to Iran?
I think we've only got 48 days left, and no negotiations are taking place. They can't even agree on the terms of the original Memorandum of Understanding. So if anything, it's been one step forward, two steps backwards. 4 days of fighting, bombing, droning throughout the region again, oil prices going up, no ships going through the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know where we've gotten, but somehow we seem to have gotten almost nowhere. The Iranians are saying that no negotiations are going to take place with the United States, but Trump has sent Kushner and Witkoff over to Doha. So we don't know what's going to happen. The Iranians say they're only going to speak to the Qataris in order to clarify the terms of the memorandum. What the Iranians want is immediately $6 billion and another $6 billion to follow. The U.S. wants the complete opening of the Strait of Hormuz, but Iran says it's only going to be on Iran's terms. Yes. So try to make sense out of this. I don't think anybody can right now.
No, because, Peter, if we go back in time, I mean, even before the 28th of February, talks were already happening with the Iranian side with regards to denuclearization program. And this is something, again, which President Trump seems to be stressing upon. So what exactly has been the objective of this conflict that was carried out? I mean, this is something, if it's going back literally to square one. Please do stay on with us, because we'll also put out the Iranian point of view here. As a fresh clarification from Tehran amid the US-Iran diplomatic developments, as the Iranian Foreign Ministry has come out to deny reports of any upcoming talks between Iranian and US officials, saying that no negotiations for a final agreement have been done yet. And Iran is now saying that it is now focusing on implementing the existing MOU, including issues related to oil sale authorizations and frozen assets. And they are also saying that Iran's technical delegation visit to Qatar is only linked to the MOU implementation, and it is unrelated to any US engagement. So that seems to be coming in, Peter, from the Iranian side. They're refuting that there are going to be any direct talks on more on that. They're saying first implement what's there in the MOU, and then we'll talk about it later. I mean, do you believe that Iran has gotten its way till now?
Iran clearly, remember that Donald Trump said that he was demanding unconditional surrender. Well, to most of the world, it looks like Donald Trump achieved that. However, it wasn't the Iranians who surrendered unconditionally, it was Trump. And so the Iranians got pretty much what they wanted from the original 14-point MOU. Now, then Trump came under attack from the right wing of his own party, and he was mocked by the Democrats. So Trump retrenched and started to demand a harder line. And then we saw the exchange of firing in the Strait of Hormuz and in Bahrain and Kuwait. And so, we're back to where we were with day one. But the thing that's important to understand is that we're in worse position than we were on February 21st before this started. We're in worse position than we were in 2018 before Trump blew up the original Iran nuclear deal. So now anything is possible. The world wants to see peace. The world wants to see the Strait of Hormuz opened.
Yes.
The world wants to see the flow of oil and gas and fertilizer and helium and the other products. But Trump is making threats that he's going to destroy Iranian civilization. And the Iranians hold a very strong hand. They control the Strait of Hormuz. They say that they're the ones to dictate the terms. And they've got missiles and they've got drones. And we see they still have strong military capabilities.
Yes.
So that right now it's not looking promising.
Well, that's the scene, because again, when it comes to President Trump, there is a lot of back and forth and contradictions in the statements that is, unilaterally being announced by him while the Iranian side continues to deny. Because this is something which President Trump, however, continues to maintain that Iran has been destroyed militarily at least. But President Trump is now, insisting that the focus is now on complete denuclearization of Iran, asserting that Iran has agreed not to pursue nuclear weapons. Again, this is, subjective as far as the Iranian side is concerned, saying that the immediate talks on the denuclearization program is not something which is part of that several points of the MOU that is being discussed on both sides. However, let's listen into what President Trump has said.
Oil prices are way down. We hit $69 today. It was higher than that prior to the denuclearization of Iran fight that we have, which we're doing very well. There'll be a meeting on that tomorrow in Doha, and to go into Qatar. I think they've already left, or they're just about getting ready to leave. So we'll see how that goes. But we're doing very well on that front. But the meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. But we're winning militarily. It's almost won militarily, I would say. And it's really very simple. It's the denuclearization of Iran. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they've agreed to that, in all fairness.
So, Peter, is there any confusion on both ends? Because the United States has accused Iran of striking at least 2 commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz in the recent days, despite the MOU, and carrying out attacks on Iranian military facilities over the weekend. Iran also, in turn, has launched missiles and drones targeting U.S. military installations in Kuwait and Bahrain. So what is the point of the MOU then?
Right now, the MOU might as well not be, it's not worth the paper it's written on at the moment. Can they get it back again? Possibly. But first of all, you can't believe anything Trump says. In his first term in office, the Washington Post cataloged 30,573 lies. We've never had such a dishonest president, and so nobody takes seriously what he says. On top of that, he talks about the nuclear deal. The nuclear deal, there is no nuclear deal at this point. The nuclear deal, he could have gotten much better terms before he started the bombing. The Iranians were willing to make a much better deal. Now, at this point, they've agreed to nothing. Trump says they've made agreements, but they deny it. And they hold the upper hand. Trump is under enormous pressure here in the United States. His party is looking like it's going to be badly defeated in the midterm elections. Trump got elected promising no more wars in the Middle East. And look what he's delivered. Just exactly what he promised he was not going to do. And right now, his approval ratings are very, very low. But the approval for the war against Iran is even lower than Trump's overall approval ratings. So if a third of Americans disapprove of, or 2/3 of Americans disapprove of Trump, 80% of Americans disapprove of the war with Iran.
Absolutely, so because with this kind of instability and uncertainty, one would really question what exactly was the motive and the objective on both sides. Yes, for Israel, it is all about their existence, and they have completely different motives completely different because, yes, they still wanted the military operations to continue. But Israel also says that it is not a party to the MOU and under no conditions it is ready to back off from the buffer zones, at least what they have created against Hezbollah and Lebanon. But again, Lebanon seems to be a sticking point, which Iran seems to have found its way to maintain and, to pressurize America to include that as far as this MOU is concerned. But we also talk about what's happening, on Iranian side, because they seem to have firmly rejected France's proposal as well to help clear the mines from the Strait of Hormuz, insisting that the security in the strategic waterway remains its sole responsibility. So Tehran now says that the presence of foreign powers will only, complicate the regional stability. And this is where, the complication, Peter, arises, because the ceasefire, which is part of this broader memorandum of understanding, that gives both countries time to negotiate on issues that are ranging from Iran's nuclear program and the sanctions relief and to regional security arrangements. However, it seems that Iran has recognized the most powerful weapon. It is not, using any military movement. It is not a military objective. It is the Strait of Hormuz. And because of that, it has, held the entire world at ransom.
Exactly. Iran holds most of the cards right now. It's got its missiles, it's got its drones, it's got its launchers, it's prepared for this war. It buried planes, it buried ships, it buried armaments, and now they can strike U.S. bases, especially because the number of interceptors that the Israelis and the Gulf states and the Americans have has shrunk. And then, so they don't have the interceptors, and they can hit with drones and missiles throughout the region. So Iran is in a stronger position, and the United States is in a very weak position right now. The United States can blow up a lot of infrastructure in Iran. The United States is still very powerful militarily, but Trump does not want a bigger war at this point. What he promises is this war is going to end, which is what the American people want and what his own party wants. But he's caught in a very difficult position, and he's flailing about wildly and making promises that he can't keep and making threats that he hasn't been willing to keep.
Right,
and
but
so,
the venues keep changing, Peter, but we don't know if any progress has actually been made when it comes to the implementation, because it's been quite uneven. I mean, the talks in Islamabad failed. What happened in Switzerland? Again, there was no in-person signing of the memorandum of understanding. Then it was quite awkward in the room with both sides also being present. We have seen that kind of body language there. And now both sides are also accusing of violating the commitments. And now, there is uncertainty over this proposed Doha talks as well that is added to the concerns about the durability of this agreement. Peter, appreciate you joining us here on the broadcast. Thank you very much for taking out your time. Good evening to you. And in the meantime, let's listen in once again to what President Trump has to say as far as the Doha talks is concerned. According to him, it is Iran which is requested for these talks. However, the Iranian side has refuted this claim.
Oil prices are way down. We hit $69 today. It was higher than that prior to the denuclearization of Iran fight that we have, which we're doing very well. There'll be a meeting on that tomorrow in Doha, and to go into Qatar. I think they've already left, or they're just about getting ready to leave. So we'll see how that goes. But we're doing very well on that front. But the meeting in Doha is going to be perhaps important, perhaps not. We're going to find out. But we're winning militarily. It's almost won militarily, I would say. And it's really very simple. It's the denuclearization of Iran. We don't want them to have a nuclear weapon, and they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And they've agreed to that, in all fairness.
So a delegation that has been dispatched for Doha, the Iranian side says that there is no immediate or direct talks which is being planned with the U.S. delegation as of now. We'll keep our viewers updated on the developments. In the meantime, we head into a